Okay, this is 5.1. We've made it through 4 units already. That's pretty exciting. And we get to start with something that we already kind of know how to do. So in Unit 4, I told you with all of them, like if they have an equal sign, don't worry about it. We'll learn about those later. Well, now it's when we get to learn about this. So when you have an equation means an equal sign. That's when you solve. So when you factor, it just takes an extra step. So the first one is one that we really haven't seen before. This is what happens when you only have an x squared. There isn't just an x. You have an x squared. So when you do that, we've talked about this when we did completing the square. To get rid of a square root, or to get rid of a squared, you take the square root of both sides. And that cancels that out. And we said that it's plus or minus because it could be the positive or negative of each, and the square root of 25 is 5. And if you want to write it out individually, x is positive 5, x is negative 5, you can, but you don't have to. So if you look at the next one, it's not solved for 0, but it still only has an x squared, no x. So we add 30 to both sides. 2x squared equals 30. Then we divide by 2, so we still need to get the x squared all alone. And then you take the square root of both sides. That cancels. So x equals plus or minus the square root of 15. And if you have a calculator, you can put that in your calculator and you can get the value of the square root of 15. Or for now, you can just leave it. That will be fine. Okay, we're going to save this next one for the classroom. We're going to move on to GCF. So GCF is something that we did do in the last unit. So remember with GCF, we want to see what we can factor out of everything. So this has 2 x's. This has a 15x. So we can take an x out of both, which leaves me x plus 15 equals 0. Okay, so now we have this extra step. It's equal to 0. So we have 2 separate pieces. We have this piece, and we have this piece. We have to take both of those pieces equal to 0. So we'll take the first one, which is the x, and it is equal to 0. Then we take the second piece, equal to 0. Now x equals 0 is solved. You can't do anything more to it. But x plus 15 equals 0 isn't. So we'll subtract 15 from both sides, and x equals negative 15. Notice that we had 2 answers here. We have 2 answers here. Almost always, when we have an x squared, we're going to have 2 answers. Not always, but almost always. Okay, so let's look at another one. So this one we have a 4xx, and this one we have a 4x. So we can take a 4x out of both. And remember, if you take everything out, invisible 1 is still there. So 4x is on the outside. X plus 1 is left on the inside. Okay, we have this term, and we have this term. They have to both be equal to 0. So 4x equals 0, x plus 1 equals 0. And then solve them if you need to. So we can divide both sides by 4, and x equals 0. This one we need to subtract 1 from both sides, and x equals negative 1. And look at that. We have 2 solutions, 2 answers. Okay, the last one, when you have an x squared and an x, and you might want to make that a squared. When you have an x squared and an x, and it says, as a reminder here, you may need to take out a GCF first, so always check and see if the GCF is there. So just like we did with the trident before, you take the first times the last, 1 times 15 is 15. List our factors. That's 1 times 15, 3 times 5. To get a negative 2, that would be a positive 3 minus 5, or a negative 5 plus 3. And so that's a 1y plus 3, 1y minus 5, except this time we have equals 0. There's an equal sign right here that we have to make sure that we use. So to do that, once again, you have the first set of parentheses, you have the second set of parentheses. Each one of those is set equal to 0. Y plus 3 equals 0. Y minus 5 equals 0. Subtract 3 from both sides, so y equals negative 3. And add 5 to both sides, and y equals a positive 5. Okay, so let's look at this one. The number before the x isn't 1, so we do it the same way. 5 times 6 is 30. That's 1 times 30, 2 times 15, 3 times 10, 6 times 5. Okay, now this is one of those special ones because 2 of them actually make 13. If we have 15 minus 2, we get 13. And if we have 3 plus 10, we get 13. So then we have to look at this sign right here. This sign is positive. So if I take 15 times a negative 2, I get negative 30, because 5 times 6 is 30. If I take 3 times 10, I get a positive 30. And positive is the sign that we want. So that means I don't use this one. I will use 3 plus 10. Now here's something that you guys were forgetting to do when you took your assessment last time. You kept forgetting to put the 5x in both places. 5x plus 3, 5x plus 10, and this time it equals 0. Now we have an extra 5. The extra 5 comes out here. So we have 5x plus 3 and x plus 2 equals 0. Now we set both of these equal to 0. So when I say both of these, we have the first set of parentheses and we have the second set of parentheses. So 5x plus 3 equals 0 and x plus 2 equals 0. Both sets of parentheses equal to 0. Now you have to solve each one. Subtract 3 from both sides, so 5x equals a negative 3. Divide by 5. X is negative 3/5. And like I usually do, I just leave those as fractions. Subtract 2 from both sides. X equals a negative 2. We're going to save this last example for the classroom when we start at the beginning of the class tomorrow also. Okay, if you want, you can go ahead and start on the practice problems. You will do odds, and then when you get to the review, you will do all of them.